This is Dick Whitney, and it's now February 2012. And recently I've read in the paper, or I'm glad to see that in Sturbridge there are plans now to open in June a movie theater, which leads me to the looking back at what I remember as the most memorable movie theater in the area, which was the Strand Theater. And that's the topic of this audio, and I will include with this audio some recollections sent to me by Charles Ellis, Dr. Charles Ellis, in 2002. And also at that time, I fortunately had Frank Flannigan record an audio memory on a cassette tape, which I've sat on for 10 years. And now I've excerpted a portion of it to include Frank's memories with some pictures of town. So that's what will follow. But the Strand Theater was a beautiful theater which opened on January 14th, 1926. And its last show was March 1st in 1965. Actually, the end of February. The March 1st Southbridge News showed that Your Cheatin' Heart was the last movie to play at the Strand. Those that are old enough like me to remember it, remember well the Strand, which was to the right of the fire station in what is now Strand Plaza. And it was a beautiful theater. Interestingly enough, very few pictures remain of the Strand Theater. I'm including a few of them today. I hope you enjoy.
Bill LaChapelle was our doorman. Bill's son, Jack, you may recall, was at one time one of the town councilors and still very active in the community. Charlie, I can't remember his last name, was our custodian, and I remember him as a very cheerful man who did his work, and it was a chore to keep the Strand clean. He did his chores with a smile, and always the only thing he asked for was when he ran out of cleaning supplies, he asked us to pick up some more supplies for him. Let me see. Of course, the backbone of the theater were the projectionists, and we had, who were acknowledged to be perhaps the best projectionists in the interstate theater chain, the Delmore twins, Jesse and Carl Delmore. Not only were they master electricians, but they were certainly master projectionists, both at the Strand and also at the Quinebaug Drive-In Theater. They did the projection chores in tandem. One or the other would be working in one of the, either Quinebaug or at the Strand, and they were perfectionists. Every print that was shown at the Strand or Quinebaug was checked manually by them, and their projection booths were looked like they had just been built. They were so neat and clean. Everything was labeled. They really were a pleasure to work with because they took so much pride in their work. I've probably worked with a dozen different cashiers and candy girls who worked at the candy concession stand. I just can't remember their names now, but I always remember them as being very pleasant young ladies, mostly high school juniors and seniors. The same is true with ushers. Ushers came and went, but one I remember very fondly was a fellow by the name of Henry Demick. He was a big help to me, I know, and he always had a smile, and I was always correcting him. He'd say, when we were closing up at night, Mr. Flannigan, do you want me to close the lights? And I'd say, Henry, you don't close the lights, you close the door, you shut off the lights. And he would smile and laugh, and sure enough, the next night he would come back and say exactly the same thing. Henry left town shortly after he graduated from high school, and I just lost track of him. I don't know where he is now. He may still have family here in town. I don't know. Let me pause for a minute. Before I leave the people that I work with at the Strand, I just want to say a few more words about Dick Callagher. Dick was probably one of the nicest guys I ever worked for and with. He had a great personality and a great sense of humor, and he was just a pleasure to work with. He always had a smile. And when we worked together doing our reports at night, he always had a few stories, a few laughs to tell. I remember many nights we went to, after the theater closed, we used to get down to Mary Aramini's. It was a restaurant down where the Knights of Columbus Hall is now located on Worcester Street, and pick up a pizza, and we'd go up to Dick's house and play records. And Dick was a great fan of Al Hurt, and he had a tremendous collection. I think he had every recording that Al Hurt ever made, and I guess he kind of got me tuned in on some of these early jazz stars too. But I know I missed and still do miss Dick a lot. He was a great guy. Well, I'm sure the logical question is, when did this all take place? When did you work at the Strand? And that was my most perplexing problem at this point, because I couldn't remember. I must admit, I'm not the best record keeper in the world. I had no pictures, nothing, that I had kept from the Strand. But I started to think about some of the movies that played when I was working at the Strand, and I hit on three of them and for obvious reasons. They had something that triggered my memory. The first was Around the World in 80 Days. The second was a comedy with Glenn Ford and Mickey Shaughnessy called Don't Go Near the Water. And the third was probably one of James Garner's first hit movies, Darby's Rangers. So I got a hold of a movie and video guide, and I looked up these three films, and I found that Around the World in 80 Days was released in 1956, Don't Go Near the Water, 1957, and Darby's Rangers, 1958. Which leads me to believe that those were the 3 years that I worked at the Strand. Why do I remember these movies? Well, the first one, of course, Around the World in 80 Days, was very familiar to a lot of people, particularly those who worked at American Optical Company at that time, because that movie was filmed in Todd A.O. Cross's. Now, of course, when we played that movie here at the Strand Theater, the original movie was filmed in 70 millimeter, but because our cameras were set up for 35 millimeter, they made, and because of course many theaters at that time just had 35 millimeter cameras or projection machines, they made two versions. So when it played in Southbridge, it does not play on 70 millimeter, but merely 35 millimeter. But nevertheless, it was a big event in Southbridge, and so much so that we put up a new screen for this movie. And I don't remember all the details about it, but I do know that they did make a mistake when they cut the screen, and it wasn't exactly the size that it was supposed to be. so we had to mask off part of the screen, and I remember that caused sort of a flap. But the thing that was unusual about this film was that, you know, generally movies, you know, theater companies have to pay a royalty back to the producer of the film, and most companies will take, you know, the theater records, and they will accept those as backup for whatever money the company would send in as their for their cut of the film. But in Todd A.O.'s case, I remember we had to call New York after the film and tell them exactly what the attendance was. And so, you know, there was a lot of hoopla when this film was released in Southbridge, and of course, it drew very large crowds. I remember that. And it wasn't unusual to see the line stretching from the front box office down Elm Street and to the left and over almost to Chapin Street, particularly on a Thursday night, because a Thursday night was a big movie night in Southbridge at that time. The second movie, Don't Go Near the Water, was sort of amusing and stuck in my mind because in the film, Mickey Shaughnessy was a... Well, first of all, the basis of the film was the story about a Navy group stationed in the Pacific during World War II, and they were a public relations arm of the Navy. And one of their goals was to set up these shows for war bonds, to sell war bonds in the States. So they picked out Mickey Shaughnessy as a typical seaman and decorated war hero. But he had one failing, and that was that every other word out of his mouth was a cuss word. So Glenn Ford devised, you know, they had to sort of cover this a little bit, so what they did, he devised this idea of having a ship's bell, and every time Mickey would say something out of line, somebody would ring the bell and sort of drown him out. Well, when we got the print in Southbridge, we got what they call a Sunday print, because of course those days, you know, all of the producers would try to slip something in that, you know, sort of bent the rules as far as the decorum in movies was concerned at that time. And so this Sunday print was censored. And what they did was, instead of... Actually, I saw the original movie, and after a while, you know, you knew what was going on, but it wasn't distracting, because, you know, the ship's bell sort of blended in with the background, and it didn't seem to bother you. But what the censor did with this particular print was he actually clipped the section, the soundtrack, out of the movie. And so what you got was a big blip every time Mickey Shaughnessy said something off color. You got this blip, so it was blip, 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 blip. And it was terrifically annoying after a while, and to the point where people would start clapping because they thought there was something wrong with the film. There was nothing wrong with the film, it was just heavily edited, that's all. The third film, Darby's Rangers, I remember that one because I think at that time I was actually... that summer, the summer of, it must have been 1958, I was manager. Dick Callagher had left, and I had taken over as manager for the summer, having, you know, no school, no full-time job at the time. And we had a contest in the district, and I'll explain later what this district means. We had a contest on promotion of film. So what I did was to promote Darby's Rangers, which of course was a story of wartime story of the exploits of a group of Rangers led by this Colonel Darby. What I did was, first of all, in the large lobby area, I put up a map of the war zone, and in the Pacific. No, I think it was in. I don't think. I think it was in Europe. But I put up a map, and I tied the stills. Stills were, single shots of scenes from the movie. I got a series of those, about a dozen of them, and I tied the action where the action was taking place to the actual point on the map with a piece of ribbon, and it sort of looked kind of nice. And then I got I think we had just probably got a National Guard unit in Southbridge, so I had a couple of National Guardsmen in uniform come and escort the film cans when they were delivered to the theater, escort them in, and they took a picture. The news took a picture of this, and I'm quite sure I remember it got some very favorable press. Well, I won the contest for that particular month, and I can remember our district manager said, well, Frank, where'd you get this idea? And I said, I just read the film release. See, every theater got a copy of a press release on every film that they showed from the film company, and it was a pretty lengthy little magazine in some parts, and it was sort of interesting to read. And at night in the theater, when you had a lot of time after you're waiting for the film to end, and you'd already seen the picture yourself, I would have nothing else to do, so I'd read these. I think most managers used to just take the back page and tear it off, because the back page had a copy of the 1- and 2-column ads that we used to use in the newspapers for promotion. So what all we would do would be to tear that copy off and send that to the news, for example, indicating which ad we wanted to run for the film. And so when the district manager asked me how did I win the contest, where did I get the idea, I just pointed out that I just read the press release. Well, I looked out at the rest of the managers, and I could see, here's the new boy on the block, and I had just made a faux pas here, because I think, like I say, I think most of them never even bothered looking at it. And so I remember I spent all my days off for the next couple of months going and making courtesy calls to all the other theaters in the district, and to kind of get back in the good graces of my fellow managers.
Well, this is Dick Whitney back in February of 2012, and that was Frank Flannigan 10 years ago in some of his recollections. I have more on tape, and I'll be sharing in the future. Speaking of recollections, there will be one more at the end of this if I've gotten my audio-visual here correctly. And it's my reading from a website, Recollection of the Strand, back to that. But I just wanted to let listeners know that recollections on my website, which I've been gathering for 12 years or more, it's really my favorite part. And I plan a book. I've planned it since last year, but I'm a little late with everything going on, but to benefit the Optical Heritage Museum. But online, and it will include a lot of the stories I have here. I just thought I'd read some of what I've collected for you, and I really would love more, especially recent recollections, even up through the tornado, what happened, because that's missing on my recollections page. For example, some of my stories, my fondest memories are when I lived in Southbridge, written by Doreen Belanger. How Peg and I settled on buying our home in Southbridge in 1980, Dick Whitney. A recollection of Trinity Church. Steeple is viewed from West Street when Jeff and I would watch it as kids riding down West Street. Special Tree and Ballad Court, Janet Bedard. World War II Civil Defense in Southbridge by Jim Lacey. Selected Southbridge news stories transcribed or written by D. Lequia. Lavoie's softball team, Michael Eutakis. A Date with a Dog Biscuit, Peg Whitney. That was a date prior to me. Interview and Hire at AO, actually by my father, interviewing Joyce Bedard. Her recollections of Southbridge as well, and Siva Rice are fascinating. Growing up on Maple Street in Southbridge, Karen Oppen Karzinski. Southbridge Reminisces, Ellen Zepp. The Project Heights, A Neighborhood Gone Forever by Dave Stevens. Recalling Charlton Street School Area Adventures, Horseback Riding Champ. Photos of Langevin Jewelers by Lorraine Langevin. Ron Spider Cronin fondly remembers growing up in Southbridge. Helen DeGregorio recalls the Page home and a walk from Coombs Street to Town Hall, where she had school. Walking home from AO during the blizzard of '78, Mary Trifoni. Oak Ridge Cemetery, Why is the Arch So Narrow? That's something that I took from a Ruth Wells book and other information. Alan Zepp recalls meeting Jimmy Pearsall at Big Bunny. Rudy DeGregorio's Christmas displays from an article that I was given by Kathy Nicola. Helen Hawley, 1949 letter of Old Sturbridge Files, and the Town Seal and Other Recollections in 1949. Article on the Great Reno and his Great Escape Jump of July 4th, 1910. Recollections of World War II Southbridge Honor Roll veteran. The blizzard of '78 and the snow of 2011, not sure which was worse, and that was me writing when I was frustrated by the snow last year. Southbridge was horrible, Stan Sidlick, and he really means the horrible parade. Swimming at Ovides, Jim Lacey. Al Watson recalls his ham radio days and watching the '66 parade. Erica Whitney and Debbie Sickles' dance class. I Planned That Well, Dr. Pioppi's reaction to my words when Dick was born by Jan Whitney. Memories of Elm Street Market and the Blizzard of '78 by Paul Roy Jr. Don Whitney recalls moving to Southbridge, working at AO, and buying a house on Litchfield Avenue. Memories of growing up on Litchfield Avenue by myself. The Birth of Big Bunny Market by Peter Palmerino. JFK's glasses and the executive lenses. An order received the day before his assassination. Doreen Belanger on the Woodstock Fair, horseback riding in Southbridge. And something that I'm going to expand upon in my next production, I Remember the 1960s by Rich Dugas, class of '66. He's got a recollection of football and many people, and I'm going to combine that, hopefully, if I can figure out how to do it correctly, like this, with movies that I have digitized for football movies and other events that my father took. So I welcome more contributions. I think this is the most fun part of the whole thing. And I've often wondered how I could share with the town. Copies of this will be at the library, so if those that don't have cable can go to the library. So I welcome contributions and look forward to hearing from you. The following recollection of the Strand Theatre was emailed to me on October 27, 2002 by Dr. Charles Ellis, who lived in Southbridge years ago. For several years in the 40s, right after the war, as I remember, the Strand was a venue for performances by famous musical artists, put on by the Community Concerts outfit. I remember my parents taking me to see Jesus Maria Sen Roma, playing Chopin pieces he had made popular in the movie Till the End of Time. That's in 1946, according to your list on your website. Larry Adler, the harmonic virtuoso, and the Trapp Family Singers, before The Sound of Music. Miss Van Etten, the musical director of Mary E. Wells High School, staged 3 performances of The Mikado by the Mary E. Wells High School Glee Club in early 1952. I remember especially that the backstage apparatus and rooms had been unused for so long that the first time we practiced there, the acrid dust was very unpleasant. The Strand was used because of the popularity of the previous year's Ilanth production made the high school auditorium too small for the expected audience. We would have had to prepare a half a dozen performances if that were the necessity. I hope this is interesting, if not helpful, to your readers.